Get ready to rethink everything you know about sales and meet Jeremy Miner. Jeremy, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me on the show. I'm a fan. Where should we start here?
Well, everybody that we have spoken about you, we have a big community, we have a large following, and everybody says, he's different. He's not like the other guys.
Okay.
Right? And they talk about your sales model, what you have created.
Sure.
Right? But before we get into that, I want to for our audience to get to know your real story.
Yeah.
Right? Tell me, what kind of a home did you grow up in?
Yeah, I grew up in, nobody's ever asked me that. That's interesting. Thank you. Most people just talk to me about sales and persuasion. So I grew up in a broken home. So my biological dad and my mom was 17 when she got pregnant. She was a junior in high school, and she had me her senior year, so she had to drop out of high school. And my dad, they had some issues, and he left. So they never really got married. So he's like 3 years older than her, 2 or 3 years older. He left, and I never really knew my biological dad till I was about 18. It was a whole nother story. And so my mom got remarried probably 7-8 years after that, like in her mid-20s. And then I have 4 half-brothers, love them to death. And I grew up, most people probably don't know this, I grew up on a cattle ranch in the middle of Missouri, outside of a town called Osceola, Missouri, less than 800 people in it. And that's where I started.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is where we find all the good salespeople?
Born in Arkansas, though, and we moved to Missouri when I was like 6, and that's pretty much where I went to elementary school and high school and all that stuff. That's where it all started for me,
A lot of people look at you today and they say, this gentleman is top 50 sales earned commission.
When I was in sales, as a salesperson.
Right. Yeah. And now you have built a massive empire in terms of sales coaching company, right? You've been in Inc. magazine, fastest growing company.
Yeah.
They look at you and they say, well, of course, come on, look at Jeremy. Jeremy's a good looking guy, blue eyes.
I got 2 parts of my hair though. Like people make fun of me online.
Really? They do? Okay. I actually like it. I think it's different.
2-part hair guy.
So they look at you and say, well, he speaks perfect English. Of course, sales is easy for him.
Yeah.
Can you take me back to the point where you didn't do sales and you had maybe different dream, different path to go to?
Yeah. So I went to school for behavioral science because I was going to become a psychiatrist.
Okay.
But my main passion was baseball. I wanted to play I wanted to go pro. So I used to be a lot bigger than I am now, a little bit more muscle. I was pretty good in high school, like all-state and stuff. I played college baseball. But I believe if I knew what I knew now as far as how the mind works and the mental capacity, that I would have had a much better chance of playing in the major leagues. But because I didn't have the right mindset then, which has a little bit to do with sales, I didn't believe in myself was good enough to get to that level. And I think when you don't believe in yourself that you're good enough to get to a new level, you're not committed to acquiring the skills to get to that level. I think it's all the same, right? And so I was in college playing baseball, and I got recruited by this company to go out and work in the summers to sell. It was to sell home security. This is like going into my senior year.
So you're what, 16, 17?
No, this is in college.
College,
yeah,
okay, gotcha.
So I'm like 21 almost 22, and I had just gotten married. The reason why I had to go into sales is because I was like, well, I just got married, and I had my first daughter on the way, Cammie. She's 23 now.
Wow.
Got married, was really young, obviously. And I was like, oh, crap, I got to make money now. Like, literally, I didn't have a choice. So I got recruited, one of those recruiting meetings where they bring everybody in. They basically hire everybody because it's straight commission.
Yeah.
And I had to move up to Boise, Idaho, just barely married, all that kind of stuff happening. Like really nervous because I'm like, I don't have any money and I'm married and I have a kid on the way. So there's like all this pressure on me as a young kid. I was just almost about to turn 22. And the first couple of months was really, really bad. In fact, I almost quit because I didn't know how to sell. They gave us a couple books, from sales gurus.
Here's your package.
Here's the script when you knock on the door. And I quickly found out that I didn't like getting rejected all the time. I don't think anybody likes getting rejected, right?
Right.
And I was like, the way my mind works Because when you go to school for behavioral science, you start to learn how the brain makes decisions. And so most salespeople, like a door would get, slammed in their face. They're like, oh, damn it. And they go to the next door. They don't even think about it. But I would analyze it. And I'd be like, well, what did I say or what did I not say that triggered them to react that way? So like, I'm always thinking like, what did I do that caused them to react that way? And so that's when I started to like tie in like human behavior to sales, like kind of by accident because I had to.
I love that.
And I started like analyzing like, like I call it a pattern interrupt now. In behavioral science, they don't call it a pattern interrupt. There's a scientific term, but it's like you have to get the human being into a different way of thinking, which in psychiatry they call that, the way I was taught, is like everybody has different beliefs, like a belief system based on your childhood, based on how you were raised, maybe where you went to church, who you follow online, on TikTok, favorite influencers. And all that stuff forms your way of thinking. Like your worldview is in that way of thinking, and we call that a frame. So every human being thinks in frames. Like they have this worldview, this is a frame.
Yes.
So when you're knocking on doors, what is the frame of salespeople? Oh, salesperson trying to sell me something, that's the frame. So I have to take them out of that frame. We call that a deframe. And I have to reframe them into a new way of thinking very quickly, and that's a new frame.
Love it.
So I took what I was learning in school, like those principles, because they don't teach you how to sell, but they teach you how the brain works. So I'm like, how do I integrate this in sales? Because everybody in the office is like, oh, it's just a numbers game. That's normal. You just got to lock on a lot of doors. You're going to get people that are interested. There's old saying like, the more no's you get, at least you're closer to the yes. But I'm like, I don't really like that. Like, I don't like getting more no's than yeses. Like, why can't I get more yeses than no's? Like, I always would question things. And so as I started to implement some stuff I was learning in school, and I took some like tonality classes and body language courses and those type of things, suddenly I started to sell a lot more. Then it sold a lot more than that. Then I became the number one salesperson in that company. Then a year later, I was the number one in the entire industry. And then, I got into other industries and did supposedly well.
I want to touch on a couple things because you said a lot of good stuff here. And I want to make sure that our people don't miss that. So, 21 years old, just got married, having a baby kid on the way, right?
Lots of pressure.
A lot of pressure. At what point do you say, let me go settle for a salary job. Let me get a job maybe in the field that I'm going to school for. But at what point did this mind trigger to say, I want to be a professional in this industry? Because to take tonality lessons and all that stuff, nobody does that.
I think everybody has what I call a chip on their shoulders from something that's happened to them as a child, later on in life. I don't believe most people activate that chip, though. Think about Tom Brady. What was Tom Brady's chip? One of his chips was he was drafted last in the NFL. So he took that seriously. He became more committed. He became obsessed with becoming the best. Think about every top CEO, every top, heart surgeon, every top, FBI agent, every top, Green Beret. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Every top, nurse or just whatever. They have some type of chip that drives them to acquire more skills, to learn more than everybody else. And for me, that chip was when I was a kid, when my stepdad became disabled. I was like 11 years old. Became disabled. We went from like a middle class family to like poverty because my mom didn't work, right? She stayed-home mom. We had 5 of us there. And so we literally became really poor. And I still remember, this is crazy, going to baseball practice that summer. And parents couldn't afford the Nike cleats that I used to wear, and they had to get the cleats from Walmart, like Voight cleats, if you remember Voight from Walmart. I still remember being embarrassed. My friends like, it's just making fun of me, and I'm like, I'm never gonna be poor again in my life. So it was like this chip.
And you were 11 years old.
I was 11 years old. See, it's like psychologically between the ages of 4 and like 12. The way things that happen to you in those age really determine your belief systems the rest of your life, like how you react in relationships, everything from the ages of 4 to 12, that's where it happens. It's crazy. And so just a lot of influence. So many, many years I was driven by a fear of loss. Like I had this chip on my shoulders that I was going to prove everybody wrong. I was going to outlearn everybody. And that's what I did in sports. Like that's why I became really, really good at sports, because I just practiced more. I was pretty athletic, but there were other people maybe more athletic in my conference and stuff that I played in, but I just out-learned them. I out-practiced them, and that's why I became really, really good. So I took that same drive from sports and just put it into sales, because I had to provide for my daughter on the way and my wife at the time. We're divorced now, but we're still really good friends. And I was driven by that chip, like that fear of loss, and I never want to be poor. Now, it took me many, many years. Probably started going to landmark forum courses in my early 30s. So this is just like 10, 12 years ago, to realize that I was driven by a fear of loss, and to flip that switch to be driven by where I want to go. Right. That was a big game changer for me, to have like a business owner mindset and stuff. But, if I hadn't done that, maybe I wouldn't have started 7th level 5 years ago or whenever it was, 6 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a lot of people get into sales, right? And you said they're afraid of rejection.
Yeah.
Right? And you said you did something different.
Every human being's afraid of rejection.
Everyone, 100%.
You go up to, let's say you're single, you go up to a pretty lady, and they turn you down. You're afraid of that rejection, so you're not going to go talk to anybody else. It's just human behavior.
So funny story, right? You talked about creating the frames. When I used to be single and I used to come up to a lady and they used to say, "No, I'm all set. I have a boyfriend." Right away, denial, rejection, right? Yeah. And I'm like, let me find out. Let me ask you, if you didn't have a boyfriend, would you then be interested?
Yeah.
No, why is that?
Yeah.
Oh, because I like taller guys. When I started to do that, I'm like, oh, I feel better about myself. I was just, she wants a taller guy.
Yeah, nothing against you.
Nothing against me, so I wasn't taking it personal.
I like that. Yeah, that's really
good.
Right?
Most salespeople don't do that. And most people don't understand why they get more rejection than others is because their approach is the same as everyone else's.
They sound like everybody else.
Yeah.
So you trigger what's called sales resistance in the brain. So there's 3 main parts of the brain. I won't get into this science. I don't want to bore everybody to death, but you've got your survival part of your brain, which a lot of people call, scientists call reptilian part of your brain. There's other terms. Second part is like your midbrain, and the other part is like your neocortex, right? Your problem-solving part of your brain. So your survival part of the brain, that's the reaction part of the brain. So when you approach, in that case, a lady, they're used to other guys approaching them. So they already have defensive mechanisms in their mind that when they feel a stranger, somebody they don't know, who subconsciously is a threat, that's just the way our brains are wired by God to protect us, the guard goes up and like, who is this? Can I trust them? Are they safe? Instantly, the brain is being triggered if you sound like everybody else. But if you interrupt that pattern with something different, maybe a playful tone that makes them kind of open up and laugh, releases dopamine in their brain, they look at you differently. So it's the same in sales. Like if I'm a door salesperson, knock on the door. Hi, my name is, the reason why I'm in the area is salesperson, trying to sell, because you sound like everybody else, okay? But if I interrupt that pattern with something different, and a lot of it depends on your tone that you use, I can actually interrupt that pattern where I trigger curiosity and openness.
Have you seen this movie Hitch?
I have, yes.
Remember the part when he interrupted the pattern? When the guy was hitting on her, and he was paying attention, and he knew she was not comfortable. He goes up and says, "Hey, babe, thanks for waiting for me." And then she knew what he was doing. She felt safe that he tried to protect her from the other guy.
That's a pattern.
That's a pattern.
That's definitely a pattern interrupt. There's so many. That's an example of what would be a pattern interrupt in that scenario for sure. Or let's say that because we train a lot of companies as well that teach men how to have more confidence with women, how to find the woman of their dreams. Michael Sartain is one of our big clients. He's a big dating influencer in the United States, and it's just about pattern interrupts, So maybe you're talking to someone that you like, and to interrupt that pattern, maybe you put your arm around them and let's say, "Hey, let's find you a guy in here. Like, who's your type of guy? What about that guy right there with the big afro? That's your type of guy. Or what about that guy? He's like, 4 foot tall," and they just laugh and they're open. It's just a pattern interrupt.
And that strikes curiosity. To say, that's different. I haven't had that before.
Why doesn't he like me?
Right.
Why doesn't he like me? Like, what's wrong? So it triggers curiosity. Like, why doesn't he like me now? So now you've flipped the frame. You took her out of the frame of, like, oh, I'm like, so many guys like me. Like, I'm qualifying. I'm these guys are qualifying to me. And now you flipped the frame. You took her out of that frame and reframed her in a new way of thinking where now she's qualifying to you.
Yes. So when I hire salespeople, they have zero experience. I specifically focus on people that come from no experience because to me, I want to be able to get more people into the industry, get more people to save them like I was saved.
Yeah.
Because of the sales.
Yeah.
So when people come in and say, wow, this is hard, I'm not going to be able to do that, right? Their self-conception is not ready to be a salesperson. And that's why they say 90% of people quit within the first year when it comes to sales, because they don't have skills.
They don't have skills. It'd be like a neurosurgeon that would never went to medical school, and you're like, hey, go do surgery.
Right. So how do you
They're
fix that?
They're going to quit because they don't know how to do it.
How do you fix that mindset of self-conception to believe you can be in sales, you could do sales, and you could be one of the best?
I think we have to get rid of the myths that people are born salespeople. Like
Right.
Nobody is born as a salesperson. Ask you this question: were you born out of your mother's womb with advanced questioning skills? Probably not. Were you born with advanced tonality skills? Probably not. Were you born with advanced objection handling and prevention skills? Doubtful. These are skills we acquire. And once you understand, like, oh, I can learn how to sell, and you're trained by, people who actually know how to sell, then selling is not hard at all. It becomes pretty easy. Like, if you come from a place that, selling is something I do to someone, you're going to have a way different result than understanding that selling is something you do for someone.
I love that.
Because it's for someone to solve their problems and get where they want to be. Now, they might not understand what their real problems are when you first start that. Most of them don't know what their real problems are. But it's your job as a sales professional to learn the skill sets, the right questions.
Yes.
Asked at the right time, with the right tonality.
Right.
Okay, in the context, to get them to overcome their fear of change.
Yes.
To get what they actually want. And that's why you're paid as a large amount of money as a sales professional, because that's your job to help them overcome the fear of change.
Why do you think that people rather go to college, spend 4, 6, 8, 10 years spending money to get a paper that says, here you go, you did it, than saying, you know what, I'll spend 5 years learning, working for Jeremy for free, or not even, maybe he'll pay me commission only.
Sure.
Why do they do that?
Well, that's because that's what society tells people to do, and most people we've been conditioned, it's called the herd theory. Like, if we're told to do one thing, it must be a good thing. If everybody else is doing this, herd theory, if all the cattle are going this way, they're going to get the rest of the cattle to follow them because something must be good. So if society tells you to do something and all these people are doing it, then it must be the right thing. And it's the herd theory. Psychologically, that's where people go. So, and plus, another big reason is, how are salespeople viewed in society in general? Lower status.
Yes.
How is a doctor viewed in society? Higher status. How is let's say a police officer viewed? Higher status. How is an attorney
judge,
viewed?
yeah.
Higher status. Judge, higher status,
Yeah.
right? So higher, you're viewed as, if I have a college degree, I'm higher status. But that doesn't necessarily translate into financial success. Those are two very different things. So when I started this company, our mission statement is to change the way sales is perceived in society.
Yes.
Because if there's nothing sold, there's no such thing as an economy.
Right.
If there's no such thing as an economy because nothing is sold or bought, there's no such thing as a society. Something's always been sold or bought or bartered, and that's why society exists. You can't have society without something to be sold or bought. Or see what I'm saying? The society
Exchange of
doesn't
value,
exist.
yeah.
Society does not exist without salespeople. So if we learn the right skills, if we learn how to work with human behavior to get the prospects to let their guard down, and the prospect understands that we're collaborating with them to help them find and solve problems to get where they want, then we raise our status in the prospect's mind as the expert, the trusted
Yes.
authority, and we raise our status. That's why I started this company, is to change the way sales is perceived in society.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And that's why people say you're different. Because
very
your
different,
approach to
probably.
sales is very different
Sure.
than most people teach.
Yeah.
Now, there's 3 different, I would say, models that most people know, right? Or most people know 2 models.
Yeah.
Right? You create another model, which
did.
is the first one is the
Yeah.
highly aggressive boiler room style
selling, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Second one is consulting approach.
You consultate,
right?
yeah.
Which came in around 1970s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you did.
Right? And the third one, which was dialogue.
Yeah, and I didn't create dialogue. I want to make sure everybody understands. I didn't create dialogue. There's books that talk about
Yeah.
dialogue, and there's a lot of things that I agree 100% with, and a lot of things that, my methodology, NEPQ, which stands for Neuro-Emotional Persuasion Questioning, a lot of that would come from some of that stuff. I have probably an advantage over some of that stuff because of my background in behavioral science, learning how the brain makes decisions.
Yes.
So I'm taking that, like, you know, why are some psychiatrists paid $1,500 an hour by patients compared to others who are only paid $150 an hour? Well, because those other psychiatrists understand how the brain works much better. Instead of telling their patients what they need to do to fix their problems, they've learned tonality, facial expressions, body language, and the right questions that gets the patient to tell themselves that they have full control to overcome their own problems.
Interesting.
And that's why they get paid so much. So I took all of that, the framing, the deframing, the pre-framing, and framing's, my concept of framing might be different than what other sales trainers talk about framing. There might be some similarities, but I'm taking that from like a background of the way the brain works, and that gave me a competitive advantage in sales for sure, and I just, you know, the methodology followed from there.
2024, there's so much information in the world.
Yeah.
Why do you think some people still stuck in this highly aggressive push product sales environment rather than saying, you know what, I don't want to be looked upon as low status.
Yeah.
I want to change the way the industry is being looked upon.
Once again, it comes back to the herd theory. If all these other people are doing it, then it must be right. And that's just because it's just been around for a long time, right? I think that's starting to dissipate, though. I think that's starting to come down a lot, for sure. You know, we're the largest, we're ranked the largest business-to-consumer sales training company in the world now based on annual revenues. And overall, between B2C and B2B together, I think we're ranked 4th largest in the world. And that's been in 5 years. And I think we disrupted the market because we just came in and like, oh, that makes sense. Like, selling is not adversarial, you against the prospect trying to manipulate them so you make money. Selling is more collaborative. You helping the prospect find problems they didn't know they had, where they view you as like getting the results they want. Like, that feels more comfortable to me.
Yes.
I think when people like look at it like, oh, yeah, I want to be sold to like that I feel more comfortable now, because if you're so aggressive like that, and here's the thing, people are like, oh, NEPQ is passive. I'm like, no, it's actually the most aggressive way to sell. Do you know why it's the most aggressive? Because the prospect doesn't feel like they were sold to.
Yeah.
It's the most aggressive because you learn how to get the prospect to sell themselves. It's like the art of war, right? The art of war, you allow, I don't want to say a prospect's an enemy, but you allow the enemy to basically do everything, destroy themselves, and you don't do anything, right? You're just facilitating it. So with prospects, when you learn how to get them to persuade themselves and get them to overcome the fear of change, it's their idea, not the salesperson's idea. That's why they don't cancel. That's why they don't want to charge back. And so that is the most aggressive way to sell, when the prospect doesn't feel like they were really sold to. When the prospect feels pushed and pressured, you know,
because the reality is that everybody wants to buy, but nobody wants to be sold.
Exactly.
Right.
And I want problem solved.
Right.
Like, as a sales training company, like, do you want to sell more? Yeah, people want to sell more, right? But we still have a fear of change. So it's the salesperson's job to help the prospect. Any prospect that gives you an objection, any prospect that doesn't buy, the core reason they don't buy is because you're human. You have a fear of change.
Interesting. Okay.
That's why you give an objection, because you fear change. You're more likely to stay with something that is more familiar to you, even if you don't like it that much, over something that is new or unknown to you, because you don't know what's on the other side. There's that risk, like, will it work, or will it actually do this? And so the salesperson's job is to help them overcome that fear. So, because what's on the other side of change? Where you always wanted to be.
Right.
When you change, that's where you wanted to go. Like, you have to change. You have to get outside your comfort zone. Like, if you want to get better at your relationships, you have to put in the work to change. And it's kind of scary in the beginning, but once you get to the other side, you're like, wow, my relationship's so much better. But you had the fear that it wouldn't work before. Right. It's the same concept.
100%.
Yeah.
So, NEPQ, right? It's a model that you created. We also know, I would say the first model that was created, IDA.
Oh, AIDA model of selling? Right. That's the first known model. Exactly. I guess. I mean, maybe there was others.
How is your model different from that one?
Attention. So AIDA is attention, interest, desire, action. It's kind of, a lot of people would say that's very transactional. It's like, how do I catch their attention? Got to get them interested. So like, I'm going to spend, let's say the first, 10% of the conversation, whether it's in person, whether it's virtual, whether it's on the phone, B2B, B2C, doesn't matter. I'm going to spend the first 10% building rapport. How are you doing? How's the weather over there? Oh, you like to fish. I love to fish too. Like, we think we're building rapport with those type of questions. The only problem is your prospects already know that script. They've had that script played on them many, many times by every salesperson who's ever tried to sell them anything. So they know you're generally not interested in how their day's going.
They do that because they believe that people buy from the people they like.
Yes, I say people buy from people they trust can get you the best result. Right. And if they like you, that's a secondary thing. That doesn't mean they're going to buy from you if they hate you. But people always buy from people they trust can get them the best results. You love grandma, right? Let me give you an example. This is really easy. You love grandma, okay? Let's say grandma is selling a network marketing opportunity.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Yep.
Are you going to buy from grandma? You love her. You like grandma. Or are you going to go buy from, let's say, some guy you randomly bumped into that makes $100,000 a month? Who are you going to trust gets you the best result?
Right.
You love grandma. Probably the guy that already has the results. You're going to buy from him, even though you don't hardly know them, because you trust he can get you a better result. Look, you love your neighbor that has the local hardware store, yet you're still buying your hardware tools from Amazon. You don't necessarily love Jeffrey Bezos or love Amazon. You like your neighbor more, but you're still buying from Amazon because they get you a better result.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say that people buy not from the people that they like, not only the people they trust, but the people that can get them the fastest results?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's part of it too. Now, if they like you, like if all things are equal, which they rarely are, they'll go with the person they like. But things are very rarely equal. They're always going to buy from the person or the company they trust can get them the best result, period.
If you knew someone could get you the best results, I'm sure you heard of the guy named Tim Grover.
Yeah.
Right? Help Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. But a lot of people can't handle his pressure, even though he can get the best result. Would you rather go work with him and get the best result and can't handle his pressure, or work with somebody that makes you feel good, makes you say,
I think it depends on the personality.
It depends on the personality.
Like you and I, we're business owners or whatever, we're going to go work with the Tim Grover because we're like, we want that. We understand that he's going to get us the best result because of that pressure. Whereas somebody that might not have our background would feel uncomfortable with that. It just depends. And let me give you another example about people buy from people they like that they trust. And let's talk about politics. I'm not political at all. We were just talking about this. Yeah. I have friends that are Democrats, Republicans. I'm a registered independent. I've voted both ways several elections. I'm just kind of like, I think that person's cooler than the other. Sometimes I'm going to vote for him or her.
As a business owner, you just don't want to pay taxes.
I'm just like, I don't want to pay taxes. That's so sometimes I'll vote a certain way because I'm like, oh, they're going to take more money. Like I'm already losing so much money. Like what's going on? But let me give you an example. Let's say that, because politics is very heated these days.
Yes.
Everybody has their sides. I have friends that argue all the time. I'm like, oh, you guys. Let's say that President Obama, which I admire as a communicator.
Yes.
I think he's one of the best, literally the best presidents ever at communication.
Agreed.
Hands down. Literally probably number one. Now, I didn't hear George Washington speak. I didn't hear some of those guys a long time ago. But as an orator, the number one president, that no doubt about it. If President Obama came to you and he said, hey, I've got this business idea. I think we can do this. I think we can do that. I just need, $10 million. Yeah. You might be like, okay, maybe. Now, let's say you love President Obama. You'd go to the ball game with him, drink a beer with him, hang out with him. He's likable. You love him. But you might be like, I don't know about the business. Now, let's say that President Trump came to you. Like, man, that guy's it's kind of I don't like his style, whatever. But he came to you, he's like, hey, I've got this great business idea. Yeah. We're going to do this, this, and this. You might not necessarily love Trump, but you might trust starting a business with him would get you a better result than Obama, which you love. Right. But you might not trust he has the same business skills as Trump. Right. You see the difference? Absolutely. That's what I mean by that.
Can we go deeper into that? Because I hear so many calls, I pull calls, and I listen to live calls. And inexperienced salespeople, they bring their personal belief into the sales call.
That is very true. Their frame.
Their frame. And I tell them all the time, would you rather be right or would you rather get paid?
Yeah, would you rather be right or would you rather make the sale?
Right.
Two different things.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, you don't understand. I don't like Trump. And the guy was all about Trump.
Yeah.
Who cares? What's your mission?
You won the battle, but you lost the sale.
Right.
So you really lost.
Right.
Yeah.
And how do you, can you change that?
You can, because I tell some of my executives, same thing. I'm like, well, do you want to like be right, or do you want to get your team on board? Because those are two different things.
Right.
Like, do you want to prove that you're right and they're wrong, or do you want them to get on board with your vision of where you want to take the department?
Right.
Those are two very different things. Because if I just argue with someone, let's say I prove that I'm right, it doesn't mean like, oh, you're so right. Oh my gosh. It'd be like a Republican and Democrat arguing with each other about some policy. It's like, yeah, did the Republican really convince the Democrat? Like, you're completely right. I'm changing sides. I'm going to go register as a Republican tomorrow, and vice versa. Like, it doesn't work. Like, they just dig in their heels more. They get more defensive. And that's, in politics, there's just a really lack of communication skills. They don't understand how to communicate. They just fight at each other, and then everybody stays the same. Like, nobody really moves, right?
Yes.
I'm waiting for the political candidate like a Ronald Reagan that could come in and like influence the other side because of his communication skills and get them to vote for him just because he was likable. Like, they trusted he'd get a better result even if they were on the other side. You know, politicians, very few are like that. You know, Obama was one as well, where they could reach across the aisle and maybe get a little bit of the other side. Right now, it's like everybody's like 50-50, and it's like, we'll figure out who wins in the 10,000 votes difference in Georgia, you know, next month or whatever. It's like so awkward, and I'm like, you guys aren't trying to, like, when you call each other names, you're like, oh, those liberals or all those crazy MAGA people.
Yeah.
Well, all you're doing is just alienating the other side.
That's right.
To never look at your policies.
Yes.
If you simply said, like, you know, I really appreciate, this person's policies with this and this, the way they do that. The only thing I would tweak is I might do this, this, and this. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to start getting people from the other side, maybe not the 25% that are loyal to the death, but there's like that other 30% on the other side that if you did that type of stuff, they're like, oh, that's a really good point. See, they're not digging their heels in that you're bashing their person. You're saying that you actually like a lot of this. The only thing you might do different would be this and this and that, but that's a really good idea. And now that you start to pull them a little bit closer to you.
Would you say that's going back to pattern interrupt?
A lot of it, pattern interrupts. Okay. It's just about disarming the prospects. It's, okay, so let's say you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, doesn't matter. You have a frame, a certain way of thinking. Mm-hmm. So if you're a politician, you have to take that audience out of that frame, out of that way of thinking. You deframe them and reframe them into a new way of thinking. You can't do that by telling them their side is wrong, because you're just going to get defensive. And it's over. I don't understand how politicians have not learned this stuff yet.
What's more important, and we're on this topic, always bring value or always disarm the person?
Disarming the prospect. Because if you can't disarm the prospect, they'll never listen to the value. The guard's up. Gotcha. If I can't get the prospect to let their guard down on their surface level, they never open up emotionally. Okay. So they never take the value.
Can we role play?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so let's just say I'm a client and I want to buy internet services from Verizon. Okay, and you call me and I say, I hate Verizon.
I wonder what I would have said that would have triggered you to say I hate Verizon.
As soon as you said, hey, I'm a sales executive giving you a call on behalf of Verizon.
What industry do you
Telecommunications.
Telecommunications. And they're like, oh, I hate Verizon. Oh, what actually happened? Were you with us at one point, or what actually happened? So look, instantly my tone goes
drops.
What? Soft, and it's a concern tone, a tone that shows empathy. That lowers your guard a little bit. I'm like, oh, well, why would you hate Verizon? Like, we're a really good company, and you're going to prove them right, but you're going to lose the battle. So I'm like, oh, what actually happened? Were you with Verizon in the past, or what actually happened, sir? Lower the tone. So, like, and then instantly their tone starts to come down, and they might say something else. I'm like, oh, what actually happened with that? And I get them to clarify and almost tell me all their problems. Like, oh gosh, I'm surprised you'd even take my phone call. You get angry at me over here. I'd get angry too. And then I go into a reframe.
I tell people all the time that client on the other end wants to vent, and you have to be able to give them an opportunity to talk, so that way they can let go of the pain.
Exactly. It's like a psychiatrist. Like, oh, what actually happened? Were you Verizon in the past, or what actually happened, sir?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I was, and they were doing this. Like, oh my goodness gracious! Jeez, I can see why you're angry. You'd be cussing me out of the phone here. Somebody else called you from Bright. You're just you're letting them like spill their stress or their pain, and then when it's out of there, now they're a little bit more open.
Yeah, you're a highly believer in sales is not a numbers game. It's a game of skill.
Yes.
Okay, and I love that about you because I'm on the same philosophy.
Yeah.
However, do you think for you to first understand what does this person bring to the table as a salesperson, first I gotta let him do some volume to see where I need to tweak, where I need to do.
Sure.
How long does that take as a sales coach for you to identify, okay, 2 months, 1 month, 90 days? I
think the first problem is there is a myth that, I look at salespeople. Why is it an industry that has the highest attrition rate out of any industry in the world? It's because it's the only industry where you were never educated about your profession before you start. That's why.
Yeah.
Think about it. Think about any profession. Neurosurgeon.
Yeah.
How many years?
Minimum 10.
Before they do one surgery.
Oh, yeah, minimum 10.
Exactly. Imagine a neurosurgeon, if you had no training, how much confidence would you be as a brain surgeon without any training before you started the job? Imagine a police officer. No training. Hey, good luck. We're going to stick you outside there, in East St. Louis. And I'm from Missouri. Like, good luck, just figure it out. Just dodge it, if something shoots you, just dodge around. Right. Or like you're in the military, no training. We're going to take you out in a chopper and drop you off in the middle of Afghanistan. Like, make sure if somebody shoots at you, you duck. You'd get killed without the training. So why do salespeople believe, why do business owners, and why do salespeople believe that they don't have to learn sales, like communication, before they get their sales job? It's like, I'm going to learn it when I get there. Well, that's why you're going to suck in the beginning. And that's the whole society. If we learn like even basic communication skills or sales 101 courses 3-4 months before we first get hired as a job, attrition rates would be cut in half because they actually already conceptualize and understand it when they first get the job. So they start making sales when they start, rather than like, I'm green, I don't know anything.
Right.
And they're literally thrown in an environment where most of them will fail because of just they were never taught or educated before they started the job.
I agree.
That's the biggest reason.
And to bring that point back that you discussed earlier about, do you buy from the people you like or the people that have the result? Let's just say your uncle just finished and he has not done one heart surgery, you need a heart surgery. Would you risk going under the knife with your uncle and being his first surgery, or would you go with somebody who's been doing it for 10 years?
It depends on the questions that surgeon actually asked you and how they made you feel.
Right.
That's what I'm going to say. Because let's say you didn't know those things. Like, it's not like they have their track record up on the wall. Like, I haven't done any surgery, and the other guy's like, I've done 70, 900 surgeries, and here's my success rate. Like, it's not like they have the stats on the wall. Like, oh, how many successful surgeries have you done compared to the people that died? Well, I've got an 81% conversion rate. Now, if that was on the wall, maybe you think differently, but that's not on the wall. So when you meet with a doctor, based on how the doctor makes you feel, based on the questions they ask, the tone they use, will pretty much decide where you're going to do that surgery with.
Shouldn't you be the one asking questions?
You should. However, the doctor needs to be asking you questions, because if the doctor wants to bring you on as a client or a patient, they need to know how to basically get you to relive your pain of the situation, like the heart and not getting it fixed, and then have a fear of future pain, heart attacks, strokes, right? And then you start to view them as an expert who can get you the best result, because you feel that doctor, the uncle who's never done a surgery, actually understands your unique situation more than the guy that's been doing it for 10 years.
Extroverts on the phone.
It's called situational status.
Yeah. Extroverts on the phone. They think it's more important to talk than listen.
That's why they don't sell much.
That's why they don't sell much, right? How much of the talking versus listening?
Probably 85-15. 85 listening and asking questions.
Yep.
15% talking.
And that's only possible if you know how to ask the right questions.
With the right tone. Yeah. So you could get somebody into like an emotional state. What the two biggest emotional drivers that causes a human being to want to change are actually pain and the fear of future pain. So if you can't help a prospect relive their pain, and have a pain of their past history and then have a fear of future pain, they feel no need to change.
Yes.
When they feel no need to change, that's why you get lots of objections. That's why they don't buy. That's the whole core of it. So I can literally like listen. Oh, and how long ago did that actually happen? And they start talking for a minute. Oh, okay. So when that happens, has that had an impact on you? The questions are so short, but then the prospect spills everything because I'm controlling the conversation with my tone. Because that tone I just used is kind of like a concerned tone. Like I'm concerned, I'm seeding doubt in their brain by how I use my tone. My questions are very small, but they're very concise and powerful, emotionally powerful. Now, you can't ask those 2 questions I just asked the first minute of a call because you're just like getting them to let their guard down. Those are more questions where you're probing and clarifying based off the problems they've told you, right? Those are more in the middle of the conversation. But your tone is the main influence of how that prospect reacts to you because your tone is how they interpret your intention behind the question.
Would you say when it comes to transactional sales or more relationship-based sales, does it matter?
What do you mean by, in your mind, what is a relationship sale?
It's a long process.
Longer sales cycle?
Yeah, more than one call.
So like B2B?
Well, we do B2B, but a lot of our sales are transactional.
Okay.
Right, we're selling internet, phone.
Yeah, right. It's a small.
But then we also go to enterprise and we sell them enterprise.
It's not the cheaper the price point, less risk for the consumer or the company. Like if you're selling a company something that's $200 a month, easy decision. If you're selling a $10 million solution,
yes,
it's gonna go through more of their decision making process.
That's right. That's right. Would you say the approach changes when it comes down to transaction versus maybe a longer cycle sale?
Maybe I don't need to ask as many questions in a smaller price sale, but I'm still doing the same thing, seeding doubt with my tone. I'm asking questions to get them to let their guard down.
The basics stay the same.
Yes, for sure. It has to stay the same. Like that's the way the brain works. Okay. Now, maybe I don't need to ask as many questions. I don't need to do a demo. I don't need to like meet with legal. I don't need to like prep them to, influence other decision makers. That's a lot different, right?
Yeah.
So there's some nuances that change, but let's say instead of a 20-minute discovery conversation that I might be talking with a company that might go 30 minutes, maybe if I'm selling phone or internet, that might be 15 minutes or 10 minutes, right? And to close that deal. It just depends.
Interesting. You come from a psychology background, right? From the behavioral background.
Yeah.
There's this principle that a lot of people say, never disagree with the client. Do you agree or do you disagree?
I don't agree with that.
You don't agree with that?
Now, what I mean by don't disagree with a client is I'm not disagreeing with them, but I can challenge them. That to me, that's a bit different.
Okay.
Like if the prospect is like, oh, hey, like I need you to meet me tonight at 9, and you're like, yes, ma'am or sir, like you just lowered your status. But you can't disagree with them like, I'm not going to meet you at 9. Like you're disagreeing.
Yep.
So what do you do? Like, oh, meet at 9? Yeah, well, my wife, let's say you're married, like my wife would probably cure me. Typically I just work normal business hours, like 8 to 5. So for me to be able to come in and meet with you to like see what problems you have, to see how we could like solve those problems for you, it'd probably have to be during normal business hours. Because if you were meeting somebody at 9 at night, would your wife kill you?
Yeah.
See, I'm disagreeing, but in a way that it doesn't sound like I'm disagreeing.
Okay.
Yeah?
Now, but let's just say I say to you, yeah, I don't think...
if you just agree with the prospect about everything, you become a slave to them. They actually view you as a lower status.
But if you disagree, wouldn't you raise their anxiety and you now do opposite of disarming?
Yes, if I said, no, I can't meet at 9. That's absolutely no way I can do that. That's disagreeing.
That's right.
But what I just did is I used a playful tone.
Yeah.
Like, oh gosh, let's say I was married. My wife would kill me. Let's say I'm talking to a guy that I know is married, so he identifies with that. And then I come back. I only work like normal business hours, like 8 to 5, probably like you do. If you were meeting with people at 9 or 10 at night, what would your wife say?
Yeah, she would think I was crazy.
Exactly. So what I just did is, here's your frame. I'm taking you out of that way of thinking, deframing you, reframing you into a new way of thinking where you're like, yeah, my wife would kill me.
Yeah, but if you really want my business, you would.
You wouldn't say that after that, though. I'm just.
You would not. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't say that because you just agreed. Like, yeah, my wife would kill me. I would never do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Then you couldn't come back and say and be like, well, if you really want my business, you'd have to kill me.
How do you know that your frame worked?
Well, maybe it doesn't work because you come back and say something different. Now, when you here's the thing with framing and reframing. Mm-hmm. It might not work, but that doesn't mean I don't go back in and reframe again. Like you can keep reframing.
Okay.
Like, and maybe I have to reframe a little bit more later on in the conversation. It doesn't mean like just because I do, reframe them into new way of thinking, maybe I get them 20% of the way there. So now I can come back and reframe them again. Yeah.
I believe, personally, the great salespeople, they're cool, calm, and collected. Mm-hmm. Right? They don't get defensive. They don't get, their game doesn't change because of what the prospect says. Mm-hmm. They know why they're there and they do what they do.
Yeah.
Say you're very calm. You're very collected.
Sure.
My question to you: have you ever had a situation where a prospect was not being cooperative?
Oh, sure.
And but then I don't like to chase those type of deals. Right? I just say, okay, I'm gonna try to reframe it. I'm trying to disarm you. Mm-hmm. You're just being very negative. You're not a buyer. I identify you're not a buyer, so I get off the call. There's a philosophy that people say everybody's closable. You can close everyone. Do you believe that?
No, you can't close everybody. That's probably a stretch for sure, because maybe there's no way they can get funding. It just depends on what you sell. Like if you're selling a $10 million solution to a homeless person, not everybody's closable, right? If you're selling a $100 a month solution to the average person, could they be closable if you have the right skills? Yes. But maybe they called in expecting something and they don't have any problems or issues. It's really contextual. Like I don't want to give a straitjacket interpretation of that. But do I believe that your prospects have problems? Yes. Do I believe that you could solve them? Yes. What's going to determine them buying? Your sales ability. Nothing more, nothing less. Because if you can't disarm them to get them to let their guard down, they stay surface level. If you don't know how to build a gap from where they are to where they want to go, if you don't know how to trigger urgency in their brain to want to change, they're not buying. And that's up to you, the salesperson, because you haven't learned those skills. So I see a lot of salespeople like, oh, well, that prospect is a bad lead, or that prospect was not closable, or that prospect. No. They raised their hand and said, hey, I've got a problem. I responded to an ad. Or, hey, I booked on this call. Or, hey, I had you come over to my house. Or, hey, I told you to come back by the business again. So they said, like, I've got some type of problem. I just don't know what it is. You just didn't know how to open them up to get them to tell you more problems and actually get them to sell themselves. You just haven't learned how to do that yet.
Help me understand this. You said closers are losers.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they're like, they get offended. Yeah. I'm a closer. This is the biggest thing that
That's why I
did
say. That.
Right?
It was a pattern interrupt.
Right. You did a pattern interrupt on them.
It was a pattern interrupt.
Right. They didn't know that.
What would every sales podcast be around?
Yeah.
Closing. I'm a closer. I'm this. I'm that. So how do I interrupt the pattern? I say closers are losers.
Yeah.
Now, what do I mean by that? If you're still using old school traditional selling techniques that are highly aggressive and pushy, you're losing a lot of deals you could be making.
Yes.
So I don't view myself as a closer. I view myself as more of a problem finder, problem solver that gets people results, companies results.
But that doesn't sound cool.
It doesn't sound cool. But closers or losers is definitely a pattern interrupt. Right. That's why we get a lot of attraction pretty quickly.
So so for the people that say, well, I want to be the closer, and I want to be the guy that goes in and gets a lot of no's, but then I'm able to go ahead and disarm them and do all that.
I don't think anybody wants to get a lot of no's. Do they want to be a closer? Yes. I think we just define closing differently. Like, I don't view selling as something you do to people. I view it as something you do for people.
And that's why you don't say you don't have closing questions.
I have commitment questions. Yeah, commit them to take the next step, purchase what you're offering. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. If a new person starts in sales, 17, 18, 19 years old, young, ambitious, never done sales, what advice would you give them to have a successful career?
Learn skills. You want to be successful? Look, the biggest question salespeople ask me, or company owners ask me, how do I gain more confidence as a salesperson? I'm like, what do you mean? That's a really easy answer. How do you gain more confidence?
Yeah.
You got to learn more skills.
Yes.
Because your confidence, how can you be confident with the skill level down here?
Yeah.
Because if your skill level's down here, that means you're not selling much. And where does your confidence level go? Down to where your skill level is. Nothing more, nothing less. So if you want to have high confidence in sales, all you simply do is have to learn more skills. That raises your skill ability. That means you sell more because of your skills. And when you sell more, when you have a great week in sales, where does your confidence level go? Up here to the moon, because you're like, I'm selling more, I'm confident. You stop making sales, Confidence goes down. Nothing more, nothing less.
If Jeremy Minor did not exist today,
Okay, yeah.
right? He didn't exist.
Sure.
You didn't know nothing about sales.
Yeah.
NEPQ was never created.
Yeah.
Who is the person that you would look up to right now that you would say, okay, that guy, he's not bad. He has the right idea. This guy, stay away from him.
That's a very dangerous question for me. As far as the people, if I didn't exist, if maybe you didn't exist, the people I would have them look at would be a lot of body language and tonality experts, because I think that's where the most important part of sales, like Mark Bowden, good friend of mine, body language expert, trains a lot of the politicians how to communicate with their body language really good. I think Chris Voss, I've become friends with, spoke on some stage with him, FBI negotiator.
Yes.
His stuff is really, really good. I really like his stuff.
Split the Difference, that's the guy that wrote it.
This is great. He's got great course. You want to get in courses. Books don't give you the nuances. They're like an overview. Like books are never going to make you like close 5 times more. You just don't know a lot there. Got a good friend named Mark Wayshak, does a lot of B2B sales training. I think his stuff's pretty good, really good stuff. Victor Antonio, Jerry Acuff, a lot of B2B guys there, sales trainers. I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of people that I really, really like. Who would I stay away from? I'm not going to give any names because I'm just not, I don't play that ball game, you know, but I would stay away from the sales trainers that still use old school techniques from, 50 years ago that are highly aggressive, pushy salespeople, because it just doesn't work. You're gonna have to play the numbers game. You're gonna get frustrated. Maybe you get to 6 figures as a salesperson, or low 6 figures, but you're just gonna play the numbers game and have to work your butt into the ground to get that. So that would be my answer.
Understood.
Yeah.
I know you're tight on time, and I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah.
Last thing I'm gonna ask you is something that people believe that you're in full expert on, right?
Okay.
And that is first 30 seconds of the call. A lot of people sound the same.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know how to be able to lower that guard and disarm the people.
Sure.
Right? To me, the approach is going to be not sound like everyone else, right?
Yeah.
And I know what I would do, right?
Yeah.
How would you do it? What would you
let's say if I
focus
called
on?
an outbound lead, somebody responded to an ad, they know somebody's calling, they just don't know who or when.
Yep.
Right? So it's not a cold call, it's not inbound, but it's outbound. Let's say if I sold, I don't know, make something. Let's say if I sold for a marketing agency or something like that. A company that wants to learn more about branding or more leads or better quality. So they responded, I'm calling them back, put a name, email, phone number. Yeah, is this John? Yeah, John, hey, it's Jeremy, Jeremy Minor with XYZ. You asked us to call you back. You responded to the ad this morning, I think on Facebook, about maybe getting like higher quality leads to your salespeople so you could scale the business, right?
Yeah.
So that first part is a familiar. Yeah, it's Jeremy Minor. You asked us to call you back. You responded to. See, that's a familiar tone. It's Jeremy Minor, right? And then I keep going. Now, what if I'd said, "Hi, is this John?" Yeah, John, it's Jeremy Minor with XYZ Company. Looks like you responded to the ad about your guard would go up because I sound monotone. I sound like a salesperson or a telemarketer, or if I was way too excited. The familiar tone, like if somebody's like, "Hey, it's Amy Smith, how are you?"
Yeah.
You'd be like, "I'm doing good, how are you doing?"
Yeah.
And then your brain would be like, "Who's Amy Smith? Who's Amy Smith? Where do I know it? She sounds familiar." Like you would never say, "Who is this?" You just wouldn't, because her tone sounds like she knows you, and then you should know her. And as a human, you're not going to be rude to that. But if I didn't have that tone, if I was straight monotone, you would instantly trigger sales resistance because you sound like a telemarketer.
The secret tool in sales is the tonality.
Tonality is where it's at, for sure. Your tone is how the prospect interprets your intention.
Love that.
That is really important stuff.
Jeremy, love your stuff.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah. See you later.